We're talking Amazon and AI and the new rules of discovery, because growth on Amazon doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing smarter. AI is changing how shoppers find products, how ads are served, how relevance is determined. So our experts are going to take you through all of this. We know we have some more sessions coming up. I won't dive into all of that, and I'll just go ahead and let them introduce themselves. So Jen, I'll hand it to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, my name is Jen Cornwell. I'm Senior Director of AI SEO on the innovation team, actually with Elizabeth as well. Really excited to talk about search today. I think if I could change my title, I would just switch it to like findability expert, because I'm really, as much as I enjoy SEO, I've been doing it for the last 10 years. It's about much more than search engines, which we will talk about a lot more with Joe.
Yeah. And hey, everyone, my name's Joe O'Connor. I'm a Senior Director of Commerce Media on the Innovation and Growth team. Been with Tenuity for about almost 3 years now. Before that, spent 7.5 years at Amazon. And yeah, really looking forward to this session today. So before we kick into the content, just wanted to start with a quick poll. We'll be talking a lot about Rufus today and how Amazon's influencing different AI agents, and want to take a quick temperature of how often are folks using Rufus right now to shop on Amazon? Okay, so like occasionally, a lot of nevers. Interesting.
A lot of nevers.
Cool. Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. So just quick agenda here. Jen's going to walk us through the broader kind of AI search landscape and really how all these AI agents are changing how search works on the internet, really outside of Amazon. And I think this is going to be really important to set a foundation and understand the fuller kind of landscape and ecosystem and how things are changing when we transition the talk into how is Rufus specifically changing this on Amazon, because there's actually a lot of dynamics that are really, really similar. And I think it really helps us as Amazon sellers and vendors and marketers better prepare us for what actions we need to take within Amazon to understand the larger landscape. And then we'll close out the session with some more specific recommendations on what we can do and how we can leverage our Amazon PDPs and tools on Amazon to increase brands' visibility, not only within Rufus, but also ChatGPT, Gemini, and agents outside of Amazon as well.
Awesome. Well, this is not a poll, but you can answer in the chat if you would like. How confident are you that your customers are still using search the same way they were a year ago? Because I think that is the big question for brands right now, whether you're focused on organic and SEO, but just general brand discovery. How are they getting to your products? How are they finding you? I think has really shifted and changed over time. So one of the big highlights is where have all the clicks gone? Zero-click search. So to take a quick step back, zero-click is zero opportunity for there to be a click. So that happens in AI overviews. It happens inside of ChatGPT when your brand gets mentioned, but there's no website linked. We're seeing this is, dated a little bit, but it's still continuing to happen. And it's actually been happening for a long time. It's really just accelerating with the introduction of some of these AI platforms. We also know that social search is much more critical inside of a larger search journey now. And this is in particular for a younger demographic. But the way people are finding products, the way they're starting to ask, the way they're expecting results to show to them and how they interact with those results, how personalized they can be inside of something like TikTok. The fact that they can use a video that has a real world application of a product is very different than word text-based results. So I think that's important to consider as well. So the other thing, when we talk about personalization, we see this like immense growth in query length. So the way people are physically searching or actively searching within each of these platforms is really different. I think it's a little bit of like a chicken before the egg thing of like, oh, is it the queries that are making the platforms want to do this? Or is it the fact that the platforms can do this now and they're so much better at it that we can give all of this context to? And I like to make the joke that like Ask Jeeves was ahead of its time, right? Because that's really how people are searching now. They're getting very specific about what their interests are, what they're looking for. The platforms now also have memory to be able to understand the user a little bit better beyond just a traditional search engine that's just listing results. So The zero-click result up here at the top is when your brand is mentioned, who is in that AI overview. When you don't get that click, how does it impact your website? Is this something you were getting clicks for before? Is this impacting your top of funnel traffic? But ultimately, how is it really impacting brand discovery? We also see just what this looks like now in a breakdown of search. So there's the zero-click web, or basically dead web, where we're seeing Google searches not actually go out to the open web in any capacity. I think if you're in the local business space, right, that is when you see a Google business profile and you just call. You never actually go to their website. You just look at it and you just take the action that you need. We're seeing that even more and more frequently in the e-commerce space. I'd say that's the most rapidly developing SERP over the last 5 years. Introduction of brands, video content, free product listings for organic beyond what you can do on the paid side, faceted filter features over on the left-hand side. That was a really big adjustment to SERP. So Google is trying to get users better answers, and now people are getting better at searching because they can put more of that context in and create those longer queries. But we do see people are searching more than ever. I will say this is 2025. There's a study that came out maybe like a week ago. 2026, starting to see some drop off, some impact from zero click. But right now, most of these AI search platforms are additive to the search journey. So they're going into a ChatGPT, an AI mode. I'm going to use those all interchangeably, but an LLM, a large language model. And they are doing some of that top of funnel research. They're trying to understand what their problem is. Sometimes they're not even searching for their problem. It's just your brand is a part of that conversation that's discovered over time. And we see that in some of the shifts in intent types. We're also starting to see, this is from some study data that we took from November of last year, just what people are willing to do within each of these platforms. And from our survey data, we saw that 48% of people were interested or would trust an AI assistant or chatbot to actually recommend a product. We then see the second highest here is purchase, 20%, to actually go in and make the purchase on their behalf. I think as people, as users get more accustomed to those personal search journeys, to the ability to automate like boring things that they don't want to spend time buying, they will get more acclimated to each of these. I would say even big ticket items. That is one of the features that Google rolled out was their price tracking. Price tracking has always existed. It is not something that is exclusive to the AI experience, but now they do have an AI automation where it will ping you your email once it hits a certain price target, and then you can just purchase through your email. So one step closer to some of what Elizabeth described as actual agentic commerce and autonomy. We also pulled some data here about which categories. So younger audiences are primary users inside of AI. That's not super surprising. If you've done any kind of sort of reading about adoption, I mean, of course, we always have the younger group that moves through technical software differently, and the evolution of all of these platforms, but they're also using it for school, right? They're going through, whether it's high school or college, they are growing inside of these platforms, and it's already becoming a part of their day-to-day life. So I think knowing that that is where they're already operating, number one, and then also it's changing the way they behave inside of these platforms and the types of answers they're looking for, that is also a really critical piece of information too. Okay, I talked a little bit about intent types. So on the left, we have what mattered for traditional search. So if you're not familiar, informational is really top of funnel. So it's research. A lot of the time, this is where your blog usually sits on a website if you have one. Navigational is going to be more brand-based. So they're looking for your product plus reviews, or a brand name plus cost, or those types of searches. Commercial and transactional is really where we get into brand discovery. So there's been a pretty big shift over here on the side. I think the biggest thing to call out is this generative intent, which did not exist in traditional search. So generative intent is when someone is going in and saying, make me a skincare plan, recommend products for me, and tell me what time of day to use it. Here's, I have dry skin. I live in New York. It's cold in the winters. What should I use? That is generative intent, where it is list building. It is creating answers, and brands can absolutely be found in that process. I like to use this example of my mom, which is a good real world example. My mom over Thanksgiving sat next to me on the couch and just turned to me and goes, I love ChatGPT. And my mom is in her 60s. She doesn't love when I tell the story with like her real age in it, but she's in her 60s, and she was using it for home remodel. My parents are remodeling their kitchen and their living room right now. And so they're not fully using ChatGPT, so like no one get too afraid, but they're using it to look up things like building codes for New York State, and then try to get some of that information, try to find the right fireplace to fit in and what the specs need to be. She's putting images into ChatGPT. She's taking a picture of the kitchen and giving it dimensions and talking about paint colors. So how does your brand start to exist in those generative conversations and really starting to think about conversational search? Because I think that's an interesting new way for brands to be discovered. You don't have to necessarily spoon feed to people the way traditional search does. All right. Other new factor, I'm sorry, guys. Other new factor, these platforms also have an opinion about your brand. So I say that sort of like loosely because they don't have opinions because they're not people and they can't have an opinion, but they will try to simulate an opinion. So the weights and biases of some of these different models and how they understand and perceive your brand is really important. Where are they getting that information from? We see it from everything from your own website, whatever you own, to press releases. This is where a lot of Reddit influence comes from. If you've heard anyone talk about Reddit recently, what are those conversations inside of those other communities that are being pulled in so that the LLMs have some context for your brand, who you are, and why they'd recommend it. Okay, and I've also talked about personalized. I like this example a lot, my golf bag example. On the left, if I was searching for a golf bag, maybe 3 years ago, I don't golf, but if I was, I'd put golf bag in and I would get some products. I get these popular products, which like, okay, yeah, Google's going to recommend popular products. Some of these maybe are sponsored. I've got ads in here. I've got more brand information. But then over on the right is a ChatGPT example. And again, insert LLM here, where I can say, help me find a golf bag, which is what I've done on the left. But then I'm also giving it some more specifics about gift my father-in-law, who's an avid golfer. So now it knows a lot more about what I'm searching for and gives me more specific examples. And then if we go one step further, I think the other really interesting opportunity for brands right now. So on the left, we have that same search, father-in-law gift. On the right, purchase for me, myself, because I just started golfing this year. And it knows I'm a woman because I'm in my paid subscription. So it's recommending women's products. So I think understanding that there is opportunity here to own certain parts of your brand differently, because it is looking for that niche answer. The results are very different left to right. We do have some of the same brands, but there's actually a little variation there. So brand is so relevant inside of AI search right now. What does your brand represent? What are you associated with? How does it better understand your products? All of those things become a really big opportunity to compete versus the golf bag example. We're competing with everyone who ever sold a golf bag ever in their life to a degree. So I think users are also starting to get more accustomed to these personalized journeys, and it's just going to make them adopt faster when they realize they can get better answers with more context and information. So really quickly, what have we talked about? Search engines. We've switched from search engines to search engine social chatbots. Way more ways for people to find things. Findability expert, again, it's my title preference. How we search, text queries. Now people can search with voice. We haven't talked about that at all, but they can actually just speak into their phone. They can search with chat. Visually, Google Lens was did a big push this last year with video and photos. What we search, going from less of a navigational intent, like my golf bags example, to conversational exploration, where I'm giving it that context. My mom doing her home remodel is conversational exploration. And then how we measure. So if you're familiar with the traditional SEO space, it's always been about where do we rank and did we get clicked on? Now it's much more about what is our influence and sentiment? Were we mentioned as a brand? And when we were mentioned, what was the context? When we asked Gemini, ChatGPT about our brand, how did it talk about us? So those are all things that we are measuring now as part of our larger AI SEO program. The other thing that's really interesting, and this is a lot of recent updates, although there's a lot more here, is partnerships and product features. So there were partnerships that sort of existed inside of the traditional search world, but much larger influence now, which we saw in some of the study data we'll take a quick look at, but just the way these different organizations are starting to partner and how that influences and changes the way the models themselves work, the types of information that's available, right? These are all built on different language models. So what Gemini uses or OpenAI uses is going to be very different from each other. So how does that start to shape and change the way products appear? So I'm really excited. This is a little teaser. I think it's coming out maybe in like a week, but before the end of the month, we'll have our AI citations trends report, which is looking at citation change over time. So yes, everybody talks about Reddit, but is it always Reddit? Like everything is in a snapshot. What we really found was Amazon is the most commonly cited e-commerce site, which is interesting, knowing that it is currently blocked by OpenAI. So you will not actually see Amazon as a marketplace option inside of OpenAI, but you might see it as a citation. So we're tracking that over time to really see how that shifts and changes. AI overviews, Google is still heavily incorporating Amazon, makes up for about 3% of citations. A question that nobody asked, but I will answer. If it's not Amazon and OpenAI, it's actually Walmart, which is really interesting. Walmart is showing up as the #1 e-commerce marketplace as an option since Amazon is not there. And we're not seeing Amazon and Gemini, because Gemini is actually blocked from Amazon. So those are some of the things I think people need to start thinking about to sort of prep and plan for brand discovery moving into 2026.
Cool. And now we'll transition more specifically into Rufus and how, these AI assistants within Amazon, i.e. Rufus, what we know about it, and again, how we should start prepping for it. And as we transition into this, I think one thing, and Jen kind of alluded to this a little bit in one of her slides around like biases and weights. An interesting thing as you start to experiment with all of these different agents is seeing how differently they behave. And Rufus, in a lot of ways, is the most unique agent out of all these ones we're talking about right now, because it has a much more specific purpose, right? Whereas ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, like you could use those for product discovery and to shop, but users are also using those to write code, research like travel, organize their finances. They're using it for, a myriad of reasons. Whereas Rufus's specific purpose is to help you discover and research products. And with that, it also has a much more specific data set that it bases most of its response off of our Amazon purchase history. And because of that, because we all have, I would imagine most of us do, I know I do, a long history of Amazon purchases, it can get really, really personalized with its responses. And I think a fun exercise to illustrate some of this difference is, if you go to your agent of choice, I tend to personally use ChatGPT just for a lot of my personal AI usage. So I did an exercise where I asked ChatGPT to describe me, and then I asked Rufus to describe me. And there's some consistencies between the two. They both know I have a family. My wife and I have a young daughter. They both know I'm relatively active in like sports and that I like to cook. But Rufus is able to get much more specific about my shopping habits. So I highlighted a couple of things here around the types of, products my wife and I buy for our daughter. It tends to be more like eco-friendly. It knows what brands I tend to purchase historically, what brands I'm loyal to. And things like specifically, I'm an avid reader, to like what types of genre of books I read. So again, because it has such a longer history of my, purchases on Amazon, it's able to get much more specific around my shopping habits than a lot of these other agents that live outside of Amazon. But then this personalization doesn't really stop there. And this is actually an exercise I would recommend everyone, like after our summit today, go back with your colleagues and do this around your brand and product category that you sell in. But if two different Amazon accounts ask Rufus the same prompt, Rufus will provide a very different product recommendations, again, based on each individual user's purchase history and buying habits. So in this example, I was just looking for comfortable slippers. The screenshot on the left, I ran through my work account with my Tenuity email address. The one on the right is my personal account. And we see very consistently that there's very little overlap in terms of the products Rufus will recommend within the same prompt from account to account. And again, that's heavily due to the level and degree by which it's able to personalize its recommendations based on, the average price point of products you usually buy. Again, the types of brands you're loyal to, and other like product elements that it knows about you and can incorporate into its recommendation. And again, to build on another point Jen made, another big difference that this creates for brands selling on Amazon is this level of personalization doesn't exist in traditional search on Amazon. So if you do the same exercise, but through the search bar, where you run the same search query across 2 different accounts, some of the sponsored ads might be a little more personalized. You might see a little more variability in the sponsored ads that get served against that query, but the organic, the products that surface in the search organically will be more or less the same, because the search algorithm is using more, elements about the individual ASINs and SKUs that it surfaces in the query. What are the most popular, the best sellers, the highest rating? Those types of elements, right, don't change based on who's conducting the query. So there's going to be, as users use Rufus, shoppers on Amazon use Rufus more often, it's going to create a much more personalized shopping experience than we've experienced on Amazon, anywhere before in Amazon's history. So as we kind of take a step back, let's talk a little bit about how your users can engage Rufus on Amazon. So there are 2 main areas where Rufus exists. So one is through a chat window interface that's accessible on the Amazon gateway. So there's a Rufus icon, both on the browser and mobile app. There's also now, if you type into the search bar, some Rufus prompts that get recommended at the bottom of those results. So both of those ingresses will open up a chat window where you can converse with Rufus. The second area is on the product detail page, where there's some preset prompts that appear below the product image. These are also personalized, and they're just based on, they're kind of Rufus's generated preset prompts based on, again, the elements it think you might ask about that product to inform your purchase decision. As well as Rufus is also aggregating and summarizing reviews, and also has some preset prompts based on reviews down in the reviews section. And Amazon, like a lot of the new features they launch, they don't provide a ton of transparency into adoption. But with Rufus, they have been pretty consistent about updating adoption metrics during their earnings call. So I think their Q4 earnings, it was earlier in February, I think February 5th, they made an update that they now have Rufus as 300 million active customers that have used Rufus. And it's on an annualized run rate to drive $12 billion in incremental sales. And that actually might have been 15 billion. I might have mistranscribed the 5 to a 2 in the slide. So there's clearly a lot of adoption of Rufus, and it's growing quickly. But we think there's still a lot of room to grow. So in that same consumer survey that Jen cited in her slides, one of the questions we asked was what consumers have used either Rufus or Sparky on Walmart, and only 27% said that they've used either of those agents before. And we saw in our own poll, the majority of our attendees here haven't used it, or maybe only use it occasionally. So even though adoption has been great for Amazon in terms of Rufus adoption, there's still a lot of roadway to grow. And another dynamic that I think is important, again, this ties back to another trend that Jen cited on the traditional search side, is even though Rufus adoption is growing quickly, we haven't seen it at all cannibalize traditional search. So this graph is showing, starting from Q2 2024, which is around when Rufus launched, at least in the US, we've actually seen across Tenuity's Amazon clients, sponsored product growth, both in terms of spend and click volume, has grown consistently each quarter since Rufus has launched. So similar to what Jen said is happening on the Google side, we're actually seeing, as Rufus adoption has grown, we're seeing simultaneously traditional search volume on Amazon is also growing. So this creates an interesting balancing act that I think a lot of Amazon brands need to play with, where clearly we need to pay attention to and start to experiment in Rufus in terms of how do we maximize our brand's visibility within this new growing product discovery and research engine in Rufus. At the same time, we can't let our foot off the gas pedal on our traditional search ad strategies and also organic driving organic search rank as well. So those would be important dynamics to balance over the next 6, 12, 24 months in the future. And now to close things out, we're just going to quickly go through some more specific, let's say, action items that brands can take right now to best leverage kind of their Amazon assets to drive visibility across all these LLMs.
Awesome.
Oops, sorry, Jay.
That's okay. We're good. We partner with Profound. There are a lot of LLM visibility tracking platforms that are available now. Profound is great. We've been working with them for almost a year, but this is a great example. This is for traditional search or ChatGPT, AI mode, Gemini, looking at each of these topics, which represents about 10 prompts per, and then what your visibility score looks like within each of the platforms. That is a great place to start to get an idea of where is your brand prevalent, where is it less prevalent, what are you more heavily associated with, and where is there opportunity. Second is sentiment. So we talked about sentiment a little bit, but what is being said about your brand inside of search when your brand is brought up? When we ask directly to Gemini, tell me about brand plus product, what are the different nuances and sentiment themes? It's a little like social listening. It's actually really interesting to see where it pulls a lot of that information from. But this is where we see Reddit, YouTube, UGC, reviews, sometimes Amazon product data as well, depending on what we're looking at. So how do we start to think about optimizing? I think I saw a question about this in the chat, but need to start thinking about what conversational search looks like. So natural language optimization or optimizing for semantic search, solving for constraints and not just keywords. So instead of a generic description, start answering specifics. Will this work if questions on how users actually query into the AI platforms. LLMs traditionally really like that structure. You'll see people talk about like FAQs are really critical a lot of the time for LLMs. It's because of the structure. It knows this is a question and this is the concise, specific answer directly below. Define your ideal buyer. So in my golf bags example, what's the skill level? What are the deal breakers? What are the things that your ideal buyer is going to need to know about your product? And I think that's at a brand level, but also at a product level. Similar lifestyle compatibility, going beyond just regular specs and into how would this thing actually fit into someone's daily life. In my mom's kitchen remodel example, maybe it's cabinets that close quieter, or it's cabinets that match a specific color. It's based on the area they're in. If it's a certain type of wood, that's going to be easier to get, less expensive. All of those things I think are interesting things to start to think about when you're thinking about product page optimization. Vertical specific details, sizing, comparisons. In the beauty space, we've been talking a lot about dupes. What is a duplicate for? Or what would your product be good instead of? How are people comparing your brand to other brands? And then building out this product knowledge base. So treating your page like a factual database. So this type of optimization does not mean you get rid of the specs. It means you add to. So it can look a little like this as an example. So some traditional example of PDP copy on the left. This is the same laptop backpack, but what we have on the left is what would be traditional specs. Over on the right, this is where we get into our constraints. So this is best for commuters, frequent flyers, students, right? Those are all definitions of some of the personas for who might want to buy this product. Not ideal for outdoor exposure or laptops larger than. So this gets into size constraints, and then the other gets into actual waterproof, right? Instead of just writing water resistant, we can write that, if you ride your bike to work every day and it's going to rain in Seattle every week, maybe this isn't the backpack for you. And then getting into some of the other specifics about lifestyle, size and fit. How do you start to get a little bit more creative with your PDP copy to include some of this context beyond just what the specs are on their own?
Cool. And so all of that, what Jen was talking about, will help drive more, brand visibility and organic conversations that happen within Rufus or any of these other LLMs. Within Amazon and Rufus, there's also some paid opportunities that Amazon launched in November of last year. So they're calling it sponsored prompts. So the image on the left there is kind of what it looks like. So again, the ad looks very native to the Rufus experience. It does have that sponsored bubble similar to like a sponsored product or sponsored brand ad. And then the image on the right. So the way Amazon rolled out the sponsored prompts ad type, it's actually a part of sponsored products. So it doesn't sit within the sponsored ads console as its own ad type. So now if you have a sponsored ads account within the Amazon ads console, if you navigate into any sponsored product campaign, there should be now within the ads tab, a prompts tab in that horizontal tab view, and that will pull up the different sponsored prompts that Amazon is serving as a part of your sponsored products campaign. Amazon Auto opted in every sponsored product campaign into sponsored prompts. Right now, the only controls we have as campaign managers is to turn the sponsored prompts off and on. We can't manage like budget dedicated or optimized bids or clicks or anything like that while it's in this beta stage. And even though we don't have a ton of control and we can't really like optimize, there's actually some really interesting data we can get because Amazon is providing performance reports for these sponsored prompts, which you can find if you go into your sponsored ads reporting tab. Within the sponsored products report category, there's now a new report type called prompts, which is highlighted there in this dropdown. So if you run that report, it'll generate a performance report specifically for your sponsored prompts that have run. And I just have a couple of quick examples of how our teams have used that to gain some more direct insights into how Rufus is surfacing our clients' ASINs and brands. So a couple quick examples of how we've used this data. So you get the data by ASIN. So you can get an idea of using this data, which of your ASINs get the most exposure through Rufus. And again, this is only looking at ASINs that are exposed via a sponsored prompt. It's not giving you a comprehensive look at all of the prompts, sponsored or non-sponsored that are showing up in Rufus. This is just for sponsored. But again, directionally, this should give you an idea of which of your ASINs are being exposed most frequently. So I saw there was a question in the chat around, like, if I've got thousands of ASINs, how do I know, like, how can I manage this data in a more scalable way? This report might give you some direction in terms of at least how to prioritize where to start, doing some of those optimizations on the PDPs that Jen talked about. Another dimension we can pull from these reports is prompt volume by day. So again, this gives you a sense over time how prompts are generated. We've generally seen that sponsor prompt volume, it follows kind of the cadence that we'd see in traditional search. So weekends tend to be higher volume. This could be useful if you're running like a national TV spot or during a tentpole to see how much your prompt volumes might have changed during a tentpole versus non-tentpole times. But this gives you a sense of, on a day-to-day basis, how sponsor prompt volume might fluctuate. And then the last example we have here is, in addition to showing you performance by ASIN, it also, the sponsored prompt report also will share the specific prompts that the ASIN was served in Rufus's response to. So you can use this data to understand which are the most popular prompts that each of your ASINs surface within. Looking back to what are those elements you should be prioritizing talking about on your PDPs, this data can again directionally help you understand like what are those questions consumers are asking Rufus most often about your ASINs. And again, those are the questions you should make sure you have a lot of detail about on your detail pages. Cool. And just some quick key takeaways. So like Jen said, the best way right now to be optimizing your PDP content for visibility within all of these LLMs is using more natural language. And then definitely leverage the sponsored prompt reports. There right now our only direct way, at least direct from the source of Amazon, to understand how Rufus is surfacing data around our brands and products. And then the third recommendation I'd make is use Rufus. So if you're curious how to increase your brand's visibility in Rufus, ask Rufus. Ask it what elements it prioritizes when it recommends, carry-on luggage or noise canceling headphones or whatever category you operate in. You can get a lot of really great information just by asking Rufus and engaging. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe and Jen. I think we pretty much covered like most of the questions that came in through the chat. Is there anything that you wanted to address quickly before we moved into the next session? I feel like I kind of got to stuff at the end, but maybe there was something that was
the only question I'd say that Tess asked about, can Rufus personalize answers if there's a household sharing one Amazon account? I don't think it would be able to differentiate between person to person. Like, I think the personalization happens at the account level, as far as I'm aware. So I don't think it would really be able to distinguish who's actually using the account at any given time. But certainly from account to account, it would take into the account specific purchase history.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that, Joe. All right. Well, that was a great session. Lots of questions, lots of great engagement from our audience. I know we're running a couple minutes behind. So thank you, Joe and Jen. Really appreciate you all. And I'm going to go ahead and take these slides down and we'll have our other presenters hop on. So thanks, guys.